Hi, in this video, I'm going to talk about the options that you have with your 401k when you leave your company. Hi there, I'm Star, your financial fitness coach, here to empower you to become financially healthy and to build the abundant life and retirement that you and your family deserve. In this video, I'm going to talk about the options that you have with your 401k plan when you leave your company. So let's deep dive further into each of them. So number one, you leave your 401k with your former employer. And actually a lot of people do this. They kind of procrastinate because moving your 401k over to a new account is a bit of a tedious and complicated process, and people just don't want to, don't have the time or don't have the know-how to actually sit down and get the ball rolling on this. And I would say that if you actually like the investments that you have with your former employer, you have some really good deals with the investments that you have there, yeah, but then by all means keep it in that employer's account. But you should also keep in mind that there's no matching, there's no contributions anymore, so you're not actually putting in more money into that account. It's just sitting there static, right? And what happens is, employers can also switch providers, which actually happened to me. I had like an old 401k account with 2 employers ago, and when I tried to kind of aggregate all my assets so I could get like a full picture of everything that I owned for retirement, I found out that they had switched providers. Then I had to go find out what provider they switched to, then try to get into that account. So it was a bit of a complicated process there already. And then I realized that the investments I had in that previous account was not reflective of my life stage anymore and what I wanted in terms of my goals. So you should keep that in mind if you decide to stay with your old employer. I think for me personally, I think when I leave a company, I want to break ties with that company and not leave any of my assets in there. And actually, you should also keep in mind that Capitalize, a company that kind of does 401k research, did a research in May 2023 that showed that 1 in 5 Americans have forgotten retirement accounts with average balances of about $56,600. So if you have multiple 401k accounts spread out across different employers, you might have money left on the table that you've forgotten about. And in the whole universe of 401ks, about 29.2 million left behind accounts or forgotten 401k accounts, holding approximately $1.65 trillion in assets. That is a lot of assets that are just sitting there, not doing anything and forgotten about. So you want to keep that in mind before you decide to stay with your whether to stay with your former employer. And in order to kind of find out if you actually have hidden or forgotten accounts, you can actually go to the National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Benefits or the Department of Labor Abandoned Plan database and search whether you have any forgotten accounts with your Social Security number. I'll put those links in the description below. Number 2, let's say you started a new job, and so you can actually find out from your new employer whether you can roll over your 401k from your former employer to your new employer if it's allowed. This allows you to consolidate your 401k into the most current one, and you can continue to kind of look at the investment and see if that's still on track with your goals. And it also allows you to have growth that's tax deferred because you're moving it into another 401k. But first of all, you should find out whether that's permissible with your new employer, so you can talk to HR about that. Number 3, you roll over your 401k into a traditional IRA account. So if you already have a retirement account set up with a certain provider, you can just roll your 401k over into an IRA with that provider. Or if you actually want to set up another retirement account with another provider because they have better options, you can also do that as well. And what happens here is that you have more choices and investment options and transparency into your investments, which is great. You also have more transparency into the fees and costs associated with the account, and you're able to consolidate all your retirement assets into one account, or at least into an account that you're able to monitor. And again, this is still tax deferred growth because you're not taking anything out. And finally, number 4, you cash it all out. Basically, you're able to take your entire 401k and basically write yourself a check and just cash it out. But I want to caution that this is usually a last resort, because if you're under 59 and a half years old, you not only incur taxes on taking this out, but you also incur an additional 10% penalty. And So you really want to think twice before you want to take this out. Like, do you really want to give an extra 10% to the government after paying all these taxes? Do you want to give an extra 10% to them? I don't know. For me personally, I feel like I'm paying a lot in taxes already, and the government hasn't exactly been a great steward of my money. So, why would I want to pay an additional 10% to the government if I don't have to at this point? However, there are exceptions to that 10% penalty. There's clauses where you have, if you're kind of dealing with financial hardship, or you need to pay for your medical bills, or you need to just kind of survive. There's these hardship withdrawal clauses that that kind of waive the 10% penalty. But you should talk to your tax accountant about that and see if what you're dealing with qualifies as a hardship withdrawal. And I'm not talking about buying a second home or buying a boat or a new second car, because you just want to have a second car. So I just want to keep that in mind before you decide to cash everything out. So now I'm going to talk about why people procrastinate on doing anything with their 401k after they leave your company. The process to roll over your 401k can seem tedious and complicated, and there's not always a lot of transparency over it. So people think it seems easier to just leave it with their former provider. But as we just discussed, there's a lot of cons associated with it, right? You don't want to leave kind of money just lying on the table that might be forgotten about or not really being put to use for your goals. And so I'm going to break down the rollover process in a very easy to understand format. Basically, there's two ways to do it: a direct rollover and then an indirect rollover. So basically, a direct rollover is where your funds are directly transferred from your former provider to your new provider. And you have to have an account set up with your new provider. So if you're moving this to your new company's 401k plan provider, that's fine. You already have that set up, so it's not as complicated. But if you're moving it to a new IRA account, you have to have that account set up, because when you fill out the paperwork, you need to tell your former provider where to send that information to. So you're basically going to get on your phone with your former provider, basically understand what they need from you in order to make this happen. It's usually like a 30-minute call. They basically tell you all the ways they can help you do a rollover, and then they'll send you the forms, and basically you fill out these forms. I think mine was like a few pages, like four pages or so, and then you basically send it back to your provider. And depending on your provider, it can take a week or a few weeks to get those funds over to your new provider. So that's something you should ask your former provider as well. Now, the indirect rollover is where your provider cuts you a check and actually sends you that check. Basically, it has the name of the new provider and then FBO, which means for the benefit of, and then your name next to it. And basically, they mail you that check, and upon receipt, you're supposed to deposit that check with your new provider within 60 days of receipt. And so you bring that into your provider, your new provider, and they deposit that check for you. And so I actually did it that way before as well, but I think the only thing was I kept checking the mailbox to make sure that I didn't miss the check, because I was worried that the post office was going to do something to it, and it was a huge amount of money. But you're not liable for it. If you don't see the check come after a certain number of time, you can call your old provider and they can just put a stop on the check and issue you a new one. So you're not liable if the post office loses your check. Now, if you need help or further questions, I did this for myself when I was laid off from my company. I rolled over my 401k to an IRA account, and I've also helped clients who've also changed their jobs do the same as well. So please feel free to DM me and my contact information below for a complimentary discovery call to discuss your situation. And also, please subscribe to my channel to continue getting more videos on tips on how to stay financially healthy. Until then, be kind to yourself and be good, and see you next time.